Hi guys, Matt the Dev here, and in today's video we'll be creating a weather application using Next.js. It's a really simple, basic Next.js starter project. It's brilliant if you're just trying to get into Next.js. We'll be basically using an external API to grab live weather data for cities around the world, where we can kind of check their forecast for the week and whatnot. So I'll quickly go through the application. It's a great kind of starter template, as I said. If you already have some basic React knowledge and you're kind of wanting to go into server-side rendered React with Next.js. So the only kind of prerequisite is that you have a little bit of React knowledge, but it's quite basic, so you don't need to know everything. We'll go through it all in the tutorial. But essentially we're going to have, we've got an input here where we can search for a city in the world. So we're going to go for New York, for example. We can click on one of the cities. And when we click on a city, it will use the Open Weather Map API to grab external weather data. And it's kind of got the forecast for the week. We can search for other cities here. So if I go to London GB, for example, in the UK, then we've got live data for there as well. So it's a really nice kind of basic starter template. We'll be going through components, kind of server-side rendered pages, and everything like that. So the only kind of setup required is that we sign up for the Open Weather Map API. It's really easy to get an API key. It's completely free. You just go to openweathermap.org, you sign up, and then you'll get an API key given to you. In my experience, the API key can take about 10 minutes to come into practice, come into to usage. So once you've activated your account, the API key you can't really use for about 10 minutes. But that's fine, because in the tutorial we got plenty of setup to do before we actually get into using the API. So all I'd suggest is you sign up for your API key right at the start of this video, and by the time we get to it in the tutorial, your API key will be up and running. As with my other kind of tutorials, there is a GitHub page with the final code that'll be linked down below. I recommend you download it. We will be using a few kind of static assets like images, and there's also a big JSON file with the cities around the world that you'll need to download before the tutorial starts. So I just recommend either kind of downloading the zip or cloning the repo, and that'll get you started. And there's also some Visual Studio Code extensions that I use in the tutorial, ES7 React Snippets, for example. So I'd recommend installing that. Not required, but it does make your life a lot easier when you're creating Next components and whatnot. So yeah, definitely not a requirement, but makes life easier. So that's basically the prerequisites kind of covered. It's the overview of the project. Just get started with the API key, sign up for your API key, and then you'll be ready to go. Okay guys, so let's jump into the code. So all I've done here is I've opened up a terminal window. You can use whatever terminal you want. I'm on Mac, so I'm just using the default terminal. And because we got Node installed, we can access npx, which will allow us to create a Next starter project straight from the command line, which is nice and easy. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to type the following: npx space create -next -app, and I'm going to call it next-web app. So this kind of last bit of text here is basically saying what we want our project to be called. So I've gone for Next Web App. I'm going to actually add -recording on the end, so we know it's a recording version. So I'm going to just run that. It's going to take a minute, and it doesn't take too long, but I'll fast forward through this bit so you don't have to watch it. Okay, perfect. So that's installed all of the packages we need, everything to kind of get going with a starter project. Inside of our application, I am going to install some more Node packages, but I'll do that over in VSCode when we switch over in a minute. So I'm just going to switch monitors. I've got, if I close all of these, I've already got the application open, or not the application, the project folder open, I should say. And I'm going to just clear this as well. So let's clear that. So we've got a terminal open at the bottom. I'll show you how to open that properly as well. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to install some npm packages. So I'm going to go to terminal, new terminal. I'm just going to check that you guys can also see all of this. Reset zoom. There we go, zoom in once. And inside here, I'm just going to type in npm I, or npm install. Let's zoom in a little bit more because it's quite small for you guys. npm install, and I'm going to install the packages that we need. So we're going to make use of .env. It's put into another line, which is a bit of a pain, but that's just .env, all one word. That's going to be so we can import our environment variables. Our environment variable is we're just going to have one, which is going to be our API key. I'm going to bring in moment, which allows us to format dates. I'm going to bring in mProgress, which is just going to give us a nice progress bar over the top, and Sass, which will allow us to compile our styles. So that's all the packages we need for now. I've installed them. So I'm now going to run npm run dev. And all that's going to do is that's going to run our next project for us, so we can see the kind of starter boilerplate project. Let's reset the zoom as well, because it's quite zoomed in at the moment. Make it one bigger. So this has already started. It's already on URL localhost 3000. So I'm just going to open that in my browser, and you can see our boilerplate project here. I'm going to strip out some default stuff that we don't really need. I'm going to go into the styles folder. I'm going to delete this global.css file, move that to trash. I'm also going to delete this home.module.css because we don't need that either. We're going to add in our own styles there. We're going to get some compiling errors because we've now deleted files that are being referenced. So what we need to do is go into pages. We're going to delete this API folder. We don't need that. Underscore app.js, so that's importing the file we just deleted, so I'll remove that. And in index, that's also importing styles, which we've just deleted, and image, we don't need that, so I'm going to delete all of that. We're still going to get errors because it's trying to reference something we're no longer importing. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to clear the entire contents of this folder. Let's create an empty div, and let me just add a h1 of hello world in there. I'm using Emmet to basically create elements really quickly. It's built into VSCode, I believe, now, so you shouldn't have a problem using that. You can kind of Google how to use that, but if I wanted to create like a div with a class name of container, I could do like div container, and it would create me a nice container really quickly. I'm also using Prettier, which is a VSCode extension, which formats all of my code nicely for me. Okay, so we've just basically stripped out all the stuff we don't need. But what I do want to do is I want to bring in some files, that are kind of static files that I need you guys to download from the GitHub repo. So this GitHub repo will be in the comment, not in the comment, in the description below. You just want to basically clone it or download it as a zip. And we're going to make use of a load of files in there. And we're going to pull over the static ones. Most of it's just stuff like images. We've also got a JSON file containing a list of cities inside the lib folder here. This is just a big JSON file with a load of cities, their names, and their kind of locations, their coordinates. So we can look that up on the API. We're going to use all of this static data to look up on the Open Weather Map API. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go back over to that. We can minimize this for now. And let's open up our folder. So I've got these on another monitor here. So this is the GitHub repo that I've downloaded. This is the one from GitHub I just showed you. And this has all the kind of final code, so you guys can reference this at any time if your app stops working for whatever reason. And I've got another folder here, which is the new app we've just created. So this is kind of the boilerplate app. So I'm going to bring over some stuff we need. Inside lib, I've got this cities.list.json. So I'm going to create a new folder. I'm going to call lib. And I'm just going to copy over the contents of this, the city list and the index.js file. The index.js is actually just an empty JavaScript file, but it allows this lib folder to be discovered by Next. It helps with building the project afterwards. For some reason, you need to add that index.js for it to recognize the folder. So I'm just going to open up the lib folder, paste those files in. This one's quite a big file, so that's why I'd recommend downloading it, the whole repo first, and then bringing that in afterwards. I've also created some custom styles for us, which are inside the styles folder. So this folder we just emptied. So I'm just going to copy this. I'm going to paste that. Where did I paste that to? So let's do that again. So let's copy that style, paste that into that folder. So that's our styles sorted. I'm not going to go through styles in this tutorial because it's just too long. And you guys are most likely aware of CSS, and you can do that all yourselves. if you wanted to separately, but we're not going to go through the styles in this tutorial. We're just going to use some styles that I created earlier, basically. And then inside the public folder, we have images. And these are just some static images of some famous cities that we're going to use on our homepage. So I need to create, inside the public folder on our new code, I need to create a new folder called images. I'm sorry if this is really small, actually. I didn't think about that. I'm going to zoom in now, but it's probably too little too late. But you should be able to kind of work out where I'm creating all these files from. So I'm going to paste all of those in there, and they're just some static files. So I'm pretty sure that's all we need for now. We can always bring over some new files if we need to, but I think that's all the static files and kind of setup done really early. Oh, there is one more I want you to pull over. So if I zoom in on this folder again, hopefully you can see that a little bit there. So inside the pages folder, you also want to just copy and paste this underscore document file. And that basically just brings in our fonts for us. You're going to use a custom font, and we want to use that. So this will bring in the fonts for us. Okay, so now I believe that is our setup actually done. So we're still on our Hello World starter app. So what we want to do is we want to import these files. And we're going to use underscore app to import our styles. So in underscore app, at the top of the file, I'm going to import the styles from /styles/main.scss. And that's why we installed the Sass library earlier. It's going to compile all those. It's going to compile all of those styles for us automatically. I think we also want to add our nice loading bar into here. So, in fact, I'll do that later on. We'll bring in the loading, the nice loading bar afterwards, after we've kind of created some more pages and we can see it in action. So I'm going to go to the index.js file. Now we're going to start building out the application. So index.js is essentially just our home project. Or it's not our home project, sorry, the home of the project. So the kind of home page. We're going to make use of the head element we're putting in here. We're going to use that, and this will allow us to set a nice title on the page. At the moment, it's just localhost 3000. Let's just call that weather app next. And then you'll see that it updates this nice for us. We are also going to create some elements now, which I've done all the styling for already. So it will format it all nicely for us. So I'm going to create a new container with the class name of home. And inside that, I'm going to add a container, a div with a class name of container. And then what we're going to do inside of here, we're going to import some components in a minute, but we need to create those first. So I'm going to create a new folder called components. And we're just going to basically try and build this project as cleanly as possible. So using components rather than kind of building everything into the pages makes it a bit cleaner and easier to manage, and it will allow us to reuse the components if we ever need to. So inside components, new file, and I'm going to make a component called searchbox.js. And inside here, this is going to be a new component, so it's going to be a functional component, so a React functional component. There's an extension called React Native Snippets. It's here. I'll put the link to it down in the description below, but I'd very much recommend installing these snippets, and it will essentially allow us to create components quickly. So with that installed, I can type in RFC, hit tab, and it creates our nice functional component for us. Just taking a quick drink. So we've created our component. I'm just going to add a h1 search box component in here. And then I'm going to import it into our home page. So I'm going to go back to index.js. And inside here, I'm going to import search box from /components/searchbox. And then now that basically allows us to use this component inside our home page. If I add the component here, search box. So we can see the kind of content we've made from our search box component here. Very similar to however you just do normal React. So if we go back to our search box, we're going to make some more elements. I'm going to add a div. I'm going to remove this now. We're going to make a div of the class name search. and we're going to add an input underneath there with the type text. So I've already done all the styling, so this input's nice and styled for us already. So when we basically type in this input, what I want to see is like a list of results that match our city. So if I was to type in New York, we'd see a list of cities underneath results that match New York. So to do that, we're going to, inside of our lib, we've got this city list. It's basically it's opening up very slowly because it's such a big file. It's basically just a large array of data of loads of cities around the world, and it lists their coordinates, their country, and we can search, but we're going to basically search by their name. We could use an external API for this, but to create, make it a bit easier, we're just going to use this static list of cities. So this will sort us out quite nicely. So in order to basically query against this, we first need to import the cities into this search box component. Import city from, and then /lib/citylist.json. So that's importing the city list there. And then we're going to add some functionality to this input that will allow us to basically query against this data we're now importing. So I'm going to create a new state variable called query. So const query. This is in square brackets, comma set query, which will allow us to set our variable. And then we're going to do react.useState and then curly brackets, and then some empty quotes there that basically is setting the React default state to an empty string. So that's set there. And essentially what we're going to do is when we type in this input, we want the value of this input to be saved to the query. So we're going to create a new function called called onChange. So const onChange equals. This is going to be attached to the input. So we basically get an event from there. So I'm going to call that event E. And then I'm going to open up the function. So basically every time we change the value on our input, we will get an event happening which will give us the value. So const value, so we're going to basically take out the value from e.target, and then we're going to set the value, so this is going to be the value of our input when we wire it all up, to set query. So we're going to set our query equal to this value. So now I'm going to do value equals, so I'm going to add the value to the input of query. So it's currently, just now that the page is refreshed, it's just an empty string. And because we haven't tied up our onChange function yet, when I type in here, nothing happens. So we're going to wire up the onChange event to our onChange function. So if I go onChange equals onChange, this is now every time we change our input, it's going to call this function. So now we can see it will actually change because the value of query is changing each time. So that's great. So we've got our kind of basic input all kind of wired up. But what we want to do is we now want to use our query and search against our city data to see if it matches any of our cities. I'm going to change this import name. So import cities. It's not one city, it's multiple cities. So what I'm going to do is every time, so we're going to check if our value, if there's more than 3 characters, we're then going to search against these cities. If it's less, it means we're going to get too many results. So I just kind of want to make sure that we're not searching unnecessarily. So we're going to make sure that the length is more than 3, I think, for our value search. That means we'll just get less results back, which is really what we want. We don't want to be getting results until someone's kind of typed in more of their city. So if we want to do that, we're going to do if value. So we're checking this value here. Dot length is more than 3. We're then going to map through the cities, or we're going to do a for loop through the cities and check whether they match our value. So for let city of cities. So this is our for loop. And we don't want too many results back. So we're going to check that our array doesn't already, our kind of results array doesn't already have more than 5 elements in there. So we don't want like 20 results. We only want 5 really. So let's initialize an empty array first. So let matching cities equal. So that's an empty array. So we're going to check if matching cities dot length is more than 5 or more than or equal to 5. We're just going to break the loop. We don't want to search anymore. We've already got 5 results. That should be plenty. So now we need to make sure that our value matches the name of a city. So we're going to do a const match equals, and we're going to check against the city that we're currently on our for loop, city.name. I'm going to make, it keeps changing that to class name, and then we're going to do to lowercase. So we're going to change our name to lowercase, and then we're going to check if it starts with our value. So value, and we're going to make that to lowercase. The to lowercase basically allows us to kind of remove, in case someone's added capitals in different places and whatnot, it will just kind of make them both lowercase and compare them afterwards. So if the city does match our value, then this match will be true. Because it starts with, it will be true. If not, it will be false. So we can do if match. We then want to go and we want to push this city to our matching cities array. So matching cities.push, and we're going to push the city there. And then at the end, we're just going to console log matching cities. So we can check our console and we can see if that kind of working. So if I right click and inspect, go to console. Let's type in New York, for example, and we can see that we got 5 results and they're matching. So we got New York back as a result, for example, everything that matches New York, because it's matching our value, which is perfect. But we want to make use of these results. So we're going to create a new state variable. We're going to call that results, and it's going to be an empty array. So results, set results equals react.useState, and the default state is going to be an empty array, so just some square brackets there. So instead of console logging the matching cities, we're going to do return. We're going to return our function, and we're going to do set results to matching cities. So now we have, is that right? Yeah, set results, and we're going to pass in the matching cities array. So now all of our matching results are going to be accessible via results. So now that we got that, what we want to do is we want to map through our results and show them on the screen. So let's close this off for now, this console tab. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to check, I'm basically going to do some conditional logic. So if our query length is more than 3, like we've done in our function above, we're going to return, so we're going to do and, which will basically only return if true. So if it's not more than 3, whatever we decide to render in here is not gonna be rendered. I'm going to use some curly braces there, some rounded braces even, and then we're going to return a UL element. We're going to return a list, and then inside that list we're also going to do another conditional, some more conditional logic, and we're going to do results.length. If that is more than 0, we are going to return something in here. So we're going to return some HTML element here. So we're going to return an li of, let's just put result in there for now. We're going to obviously edit that. And if it's not true, so if there are no results, so if our query length is more than 3, but we haven't got any results, our results array is empty, we're going to return an li with the class of no results. Is that right? No dash results. I'm just going to check my code from previously. Sorry, it's search, and the class name is going to be li.search __ no dash results, and then we're going to just put no results found. So now we actually need to, if we do have results, we need to map through those results and kind of render a link for someone to click. So what we want to do in here is we're going to do results.map, and we're going to map through our results, and we're going to call that our variable there, city. So we're going to use the city, and we're going to do some more rounded brackets, and we're going to return an li element. And when you're mapping through, you need to add a key. So for now, we are just going to put the city. What should we put in here? We basically need to make, when you map through anything on React, you basically have to make sure the key is unique. So for now, we are going to change this, but for now, we're going to add an extra comma next to city and add index, and that will give us the index of an element. And obviously each index will be different, so we can use the index as a unique key. And what we want to do is we basically want to return links in here to show, to go to the relevant cities page. So what we need to do is we need to go to the top of the project, or top of the component, sorry, import link from next/link. Next have their own built-in link, which works with their router, so you have to use that element instead of like an A tag, or you pass that element in first, and then we can pass in an A tag. So inside this, we're going to make a link, and we are going to set the href of that link to something. I haven't decided what yet. Location/name. We'll just put that in as a placeholder first. So it's going to go to like /location/city name. This is hard typed, but we're going to change that in a bit. We're going to add an A tag inside this link to basically make it display as a link. And then we're going to do some curly braces here. City.name. So that's going to it's going to render the city name. And some of them have states. If they're in the US, they have a state. So we're going to do some conditional logic here that says state. And we're going to do some template literals there. So they're backticks. And we are going to say if there is, so this is doing, if there is a state, we're going to render city.state. And if there isn't a state, we're just going to render nothing. So empty empty quotes in there. And then underneath there, we're going to add a span element, and we're going to put in some brackets. We're going to put the city country. So city.country. So I'm going to save that there. And we're going to basically, that's going to force us to render city.name, city.state in our results. So let's give this a go. This might error out, seeing as we're using the same href for each one. But if I was to type in New York, oh, it hasn't. Brilliant. When we type in New York, we now get our results underneath as link elements. However, for each of our link elements, at the moment, you see they're just going to a city name page. We need to create proper page slugs that it's going to go to. So there's a couple of ways we could do this. We could either do all of the logic here to make we basically need to make unique slugs for each city. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to scroll back up to our onChange function. Let's make this smaller now. And where we're pushing the city here, instead, I'm going to do if city match. We're going to basically adjust the city slightly. So I'm going to make some new data. I'm going to make a new variable called const city data. I'm going to make that an object. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use ... and type in city, which basically spreads the existing city. But we're also going to add a slug, which we're going to use as a page slug. So that's going to allow us to use it's going to basically push a slug to our results, which we can then use to create a nice unique page name. So we're using template literals, which is the backticks. And inside there, a $ and curly braces. It's going to be the city name. It's a lowercase. But we can't have spaces in URLs. So what we're going to do is we're going to use .replace. And in here, we're going to replace every space with a dash. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a // and then we're going to type in G, which means globally. So this means basically this is going to replace every empty space with whatever we put inside of our quotation mark. So we're going to put a dash. And then each city, I'm not going to go open up the city. Well, I can. I'll open up the city list.json again. Each city has an ID next to it. So there could be multiple cities with the same name. So we need to also attach something unique to the slug so we know which city to look for. So we're going to add the ID to the end of the slug as well. So I'm going to add city.id. So this will basically ensure that every single slug for our cities is going to be unique. And then instead of pushing city to the matching cities array, we're now going to push the city data. And now down here, so now that we're pushing extra data inside city, instead we can replace this with our unique slug. So I'm going to do href equals curly brackets, and then we're going to use template literals again, so backticks, and it's going to be /location, / and then the $, curly braces, and we can access city.slug. So it's going to be a unique slug every time. So now we can also, our key, we can also set to city.slug. So we know our slug's always unique, so we don't need this index anymore. So let's save that. Let's wait for our app to refresh. And let's type in New York. So you can now see it's very small at the bottom for you guys, but if you hover over each link, each of them has a nice unique result now. So we can use our slugs to basically find out which area. So when we create our new page, when we create our kind of relevant weather pages for each city, we know which one we're referring to. So that's brilliant. So now, if I was to click one of these links, we haven't created the page yet, so you're going to see we've got an error there, which is absolutely fine. That's as expected, because we haven't created those pages yet. So what we're going to do now is we're going to add a inside of our pages, we're going to create a new folder called location. And then inside there, so when you're making dynamic pages with Next.js, we're going to have basically the URL we'll end up going to is localhost 3000 / location, which is our folder name, and then a city name. So we want to create in square brackets. We want to create in square brackets city, and then close the square brackets .js, and that basically allows us to access any kind of dynamic slug that we're going to make, because it could be any slug. So location / city, we're going to pass in there. So now we've got our new pages. We've got our functional component page. So why don't I type in, if I type in RFC, we're going to create our nice React component. But the problem is that this isn't allowed. We're not allowed square brackets in our name, so I'm just going to call it city there. So h1 city page. So now we've created that page. If I type in New York, click the link, it will take us to the city page, which is brilliant. So, right, let me just open up the code for the city page that I've already made. So this is where basically, this is exactly where React kind of comes, Next.js comes in. So with Next.js, it's server-side rendered, or we can make use of server-side rendering. In React, when you kind of go to one of these pages, you wait till the page loads, and then you'd grab the data. So you'd need all those kind of loading icons and whatnot. But because we are making use of Next.js, we can basically grab the data before the page loads. So as soon as the page loads, we have all of our data available, which is great, because in comparison to React, we might have to do loads of null checks to check that the data is there and whatnot. So what we do to kind of grab data first is you can make use of a few different ways of kind of grabbing data. There's some functions you can use, for example, get static props. But the one we're going to be using is export async function. This is all kind of base Next stuff. I'm going to get server side props. And then we're going to pass in context into that function, because that's what we're given on this page. And then we are going to, at the end, you basically always want to return something from this function. So if your data is likely to change, you want to make use of get server-side props. Our data is weather data, it's live data, so every time we go to the page, it could change. If your data wasn't going to change, say you had a blog, say you were making a blog, you were getting your data from somewhere, but that blog data isn't going to change a lot. You'd use something like get static props instead of get server-side props, because static props suggests that the data isn't going to change likely. There are ways around it. When you update the page, when you update your blog post, for example, you'd have to rebuild and stuff like that. But if you use get static props, the idea is that data is, you've got to fetch it still, but it's not going to change. Our data is going to constantly change, so we're going to get server-side props. And from our context, we are basically able to get, you see this city in here, we're basically able to get the slug from, basically we can, let's grab the slug from our context now. So we're going to const slug equals context.params.city. So that's basically saying, because we've called our file square braces city, the slug is going to be on this city element. And then we can return this data below. So I'm going to return slug, and it's going to be equal to slug. And then inside of our component, if I can basically pull in the props. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull in this slug props, which is going to be passed to us from this get server-side props. And I can use that underneath. So I can h2, and then I could show the slug. And we have access to this prop. So let's try that out. New York. Go to the city page. And of course, it's not working. So what have we done wrong here? So we've got a compilation error. So additional keys return. Properties intended for use. Component must be under the props key. So what have we done wrong? Instead of just returning slug, we need to return. This is incorrect. What we should have done is return props slug. So you return props, and inside there you can add all of the information you want. So that's where we went wrong there. So there we go. I've now passed in this slug. I'm making use of it in the page, and we can see our slug here. So that's great. We're able to grab the city. But now what? We need to actually grab the data. Well, to grab the data, what we want to do is we don't actually have the city here. We don't have any information on the city. We just have a slug. So we need to use this slug to grab our city first, so we can then make, or our city data, so that we can then make an API call to the OpenWeathersMap API to grab some data. So from this slug, ideally, what we want to get is this ID, because with this ID, we can then search up the city list.json. We can search up our city on this by the ID, and we can grab all of the information we need. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a little helper function underneath, and we're going to do const get city ID, and we're going to pass in param there. So what we're going to do is we're going to create this little helper function to get rid of this rubbish, this fluff at the start, and just return us the numbers, the ID we need at the end. So to do that, we're going to call above here. We can kind of remove this now, or we'll save that for later. Const city is going to be get city ID. Or get city ID is probably the wrong thing. We don't really want to call it get city ID. We want to call it get city. So we're just going to call const city equals get city, and we're going to pass in that context.params.city. So inside this helper function here, what we're going to do is we're going to use our context to search up the city, like we said earlier. So we're going to do const city param, and what we're going to do is we're going to use the param we pass in, and we're going to trim it. So if anyone doesn't know what trim does, it's going to basically remove any white space between either side of the of our slug here. We're not likely to have white space, but you can. It's just a safe measure to take. And then we're going to get the ID of the city. So what we're going to do is we're going to split the city. So we're going to split up the string by using cityparam.split. And we're going to split it by every dash. So it'll basically allow us to. It'll basically return. In fact, I'll just show you. Let's console log split city. So if I inspect the page, we'll show you what that returns. So if I refresh the page, is that not going to work? Go on to get city. Why is it not working? Console log. Because it's server-side rendered. I was looking in the web console, which is incorrect. It's server-side, so it's going to appear down here. So you can see the split. It basically splits up our slug into usable stuff. We want the ID, and the ID is always going to be this last element. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do const ID equals split city. So we're going to use that data. Split city. Oh, we're going to use split city dot length -1. So what we're doing here to grab the ID is we're just taking the last array element of that split city. So if I console log ID, you'll now see when the page refreshes, it's compiling at the moment. Let's refresh the page. We now get the ID. So that's the ID just on its own, which is great. So if there is no ID, I want to return null. Something's gone wrong. There's no ID, no data there to be collected. We need to be able to return null. And then const city. So I'm now going to look up the city. So from our big JSON file. So what I want to do is I want to import our big JSON file. So import cities from //lib citylist.json. Const city equals cities.find. So I'm going to search through all of our data. I'm going to find a city that is equal to our ID. So city.id, I'm going to do to string to make sure it's a string, is equal to our ID here. Because the city ID at the moment is a number, but our version of the ID is a string, so we're using .toString there. If there is a city, so if there's a match, return the city, else return null. So now what we can do at the top is we can console log city. And now that I've refreshed the page, this might be a bit small for you guys to see, but we're now getting our data through, which is perfect. We can now essentially use our city data, because we've now got coordinates to look data up online, which is perfect. We can use the Open Weather Map API to look up the current weather. So what I'm going to do is, well, first of all, we want to do some more checks here. If there is no city, we need to check. If there's no city, we need to return not found true. And this basically tells React there's no page there, something's gone wrong, show a 404 page. So we can test this out. If I put a random location URL here, so if I just type in some crap here, should be redirected to a 404 page because there is no city. Perfect. That works. Let's go back. So once we have our city, we need to make a request to our API. So what we're going to do here is we now need to make use of our local environment variables. We need to bring in our API key from the Open Weather Map. So I'm going to create a new file in the root of the directory. It's going to be called .env.local. And inside here, so if you don't know about environment variables, it's basically a way for us to hide our keys. It means we won't push them to GitHub because this env.local is in our gitignore and whatnot. So I'm going to make an API key. I'm going to make that equal to whatever our Open Weather Map API key is. And here's my one here. So I'm going to copy that. I'm going to paste it in there. So there's our API key there. API key equals that. So we can now reference this in our project. No, that's a lie. We can't actually reference this in the project yet because what we need to do in next config. So this is our next config that would have come. We need to make sure that our API keys are imported. So this is where our .env comes in perfectly. This kind of the npm package we installed at the start. So what we're going to do is we're going to require .env.config, and that will allow us, once we restart the application, the important thing is here, once you make changes to next.config.js, you need to restart. So you found a change here in next.js, restart the server to see the changes in effect. We need to restart the server, and then we'll be able to access our environment variables inside of our project. So what I can now do is I can do a console.log, and I can console log our process.env.api key, just to double check that our API key is being pulled in. So let's refresh the page there. And there you can see, once I refresh the web browser, you can see that our API key is being pulled in, which is brilliant. So now we've got that data, we need to now make a request to our API to grab the current weather data. So what we're going to do is we're going to do const res equals. We're now going to fetch the data from online, and we're going to do await, so it's async, and we're going to fetch. I'm going to use template literals, and we're going to make a fetch request to https://api.openweathermap.org. This is all in their documentation if you want to find it. /data/2.5/1 call. And then what we're going to do is we're going to then pass in some data. What we need to pass into this API call is the longitudinal and latitudinal values of the location, so that our API knows where we're asking for data from. So we're going to type in lat, which is the latitudinal map location, and this is all available on our city object. So city.coord, so standing for coordinates.lat, and we're going to do and long equals $ curly braces city.coord. What is it? LON. So long is wrong. It's LON, sorry. And LON equals city.coord.lon. And then we need to do and app ID is equal to, so this is where we need our process.env.api key. And I'm going to add at the end of the call, I'm going to add a basically I'm going to add in what units I want to use. So I'm going to use units equals metric. Basically, in the UK, we use Celsius. If you wanted Fahrenheit, depending on where you're from, then you could use imperial as units. And then there's also some other options. You can check out the OpenWeatherMap API docs to change the units. But I use Celsius, so I'm going to do that in here. And then what else do I need to do? I need to exclude some data. So I'm going to do and again, and exclude. And we're going to exclude minutely, because that's too much data. So we're going to exclude the minutely data. This is all, again, from the API docs. This is nothing I'm doing. This is nothing I've created. We're just I've just referenced the API docs, and I'm making an API call. So once that's happened, we can do const data equals await res.json. This is going to basically take what we've typed in here. What we typed in here. I don't need that at the top. It's going to turn it into readable data. And then I want to check if that data is good. If there's no data, we're going to return not found is true, so something's gone wrong. Else, I'm just going to console log the data, just to check that we're getting something through. So let's compile it and let's give it a go. Let's refresh the page. And here you go. So we now have live data here. I'm going to make this terminal bigger. We've got lots of data, which is absolutely brilliant. We've got all of our weather data, so we've made our API call properly. Our API key is working. It's great to see. And we're grabbing all the current data. We've got the hourly data, and we've got stuff like the daily and weekly data. There's loads of data for us to use, which is brilliant. However, this data, as it kind of is not very readable. It's kind of all over the place. So I'm going to pass the data in here. I'm going to pass it in as a prop, so I'm going to return it as a prop. And inside our component, I'm going to access that prop by doing data here. And I'm just going to console log the data here as well, so that I can just read it in the console where it'll format it a bit nicer for me. So if I right click and inspect, go to console, here's all of our data. So it's brilliant. We've got lots of data. We've got alerts, we've got current data, which is literal current time, and then we've got daily data, so that's a week's worth of weather forecast, and then we've got the hourly forecast as well. So what we want to do is we want to actually split this data up. we basically need to make it readable and ready for us to use. Little things like the hourly data. We've got hourly data here for, you can see here 48. That's 48 hours worth of hourly data. We don't actually want that. We only want hourly, so that will cover 2 days. We only want data for 1 day. This current day, the hourly data, we're not going to use any other data. So again, what we're going to do is we're going to create another helper function so that we can, instead of having 48 results, we just want hourly data for the rest of the day. So this is going to be a helper function to help us kind of whittle down the data to stuff that we can actually use. So I'm going to make a new function called const get hourly data. I'm going to put in brackets hourly data. It's going to be equal to, and so now we're going to open it. So we're going to pass in some hourly data. So what we're going to do is we want to now mess around with time stuff. Time stuff gets really confusing and really irritating. So just bear with me and I'll try and explain it as well as possible. So const current equals new date. What we're going to do here, this new date is getting the current date right now, but we want the date at 0 hours. We want it today's date and time. So we're going to set hours to current.get hours. I'm going to set that to 0, 0, 0. So what that's done is it's grabbed the current hour and done it to the start of the hour. So we've gone back to, for example, the time now is coming up to 6 p.m. So it's going to return us, well, it's 5:45, so it's going to return us the start of hour 5. We want tomorrow's time here. So tomorrow equals new date, and we're going to use current inside there, and then we're going to do tomorrow.set date. I'm going to do tomorrow.get date, and then we're going to do get date. What do we want to do? And then we want to do +1 there. So we're trying to get tomorrow's date. So we're adding a day on here. So that'll be tomorrow, and then we want to set it tomorrow at midnight. So set hours. We're just going to set that 1, 0, 0, 0, 0. So basically all we're doing here is we're creating some variables that we can use to sort the data. We only want data for today and tomorrow. Sorry, not for tomorrow. We only want hourly data for today. So what we're going to do now, you can see here, all of the data has DT assigned to it. That's date timestamp. So what we want to do is we're going to check that date timestamp. We want to check that the hourly data is today by comparing these variables to that. So we need to get the timestamps to be able to compare our data. So divide by 1000 to get timestamps in seconds. So we want to get the timestamps for each of these variables. So const current timestamp equals math.floor, which is going to basically make it a whole number. Current.get time, and we're dividing it by 1000 because the DT data here we're given is timestamps basically to the hour. Const tomorrow timestamp equals math.floor. It's current.get. No, not current. We want tomorrow dot get time divided by 1000, because we basically the timestamps here are in seconds and we've got them in milliseconds. This variable at the moment is in milliseconds and the data we have is in seconds, so we need to divide it by 1000. And then we can do const today's data. I hope you're staying with me here. It's a bit confusing, this bit. And we're going to filter through the hourly data that we passed in, and we're only going to, we want to filter it so that the data.datetime is less than tomorrow timestamp. So in the end, I don't think actually we need to make use of the current timestamp, but we'll check that later on. Today's data, I'm going to call that variable, and then we're going to return today's data. So all we've done there is hopefully if we've written our function correctly, we're just going to sort out, instead of 48 hours, we're going to have just the hours we need. So inside this variable here, so we're now going to sort out our props. We're going to kind of make it nice and neat and tidy. So we're going to sort out, so we want to pass, what we want to pass in is the city data. So city is equal to city here. So we can access the city data from our component. We want the current weather, which is equal to data, data.current. We're using this data here, look. And what else do we want? So we then want to also, current here. We also want the, is it daily weather? Yeah, daily weather. So data.daily. And then we want to make use of our new function that we've made. So we can delete this now. This nice new function, const hourly weather. In fact, we don't even need to make a new const there. We'll do hourly weather down here. Is equal to get hourly weather, and we want to pass in data.hourly. And now, in theory, we'll double check it, but if we now access the data we want here, so this slug should fail now because I've removed that prop. If we now access hourly data, for example, and then we can do city as well. So whatever we make these props here, so we've got city, current weather, daily weather, hourly weather. So city, hourly weather, not data, current weather, and I've already forgotten what the other one was. Current weather, daily weather. That's the last one. I want daily weather. So we're getting errors because we're console logging data. We've now sorted out that data. So let's have a look at the hourly data, see if our nice new function worked. And what's wrong here? Console log hourly data. Hourly weather. Getting all my variable names confused here. Undefined. So what's going wrong? Get hourly weather, data.hourly. Let's try const hourly weather equals get hourly weather, data.hourly. Let's try console logging it earlier. So let's see what's going on. So if we refresh the page, it's working there. So instead of this, maybe we need to pass in, let's try passing in hourly weather here. Let's give that a go. I think all it was is that we needed to refresh the page. So we've just added in an extra step there, but I'm near certain we didn't need to go that far. But you can now see that our hourly, instead of 48 hours, we've now kind of whittled it down to much, much nicer times. So we've only got times the rest of the day. So there's 7 hours left in the day, and we've been returned 7 hours. So we also have what we got. That there is our hourly weather. We could also check out our current weather. So we've sorted out our data quite nicely. If I refresh, we've got our current weather here. And we also have the city data. We're passing that down. So you can see that there, look. And the daily weather, which is essentially what we're going to use for the weekly weather. And we got all the weekly weather there, which is perfect. So we're now sorting all of the data correctly. That's all done and proper. We're console logging city somewhere, are we? No. All good. So let's just check that we're not console logging any data we don't need anymore. Nope, just console logging it there. So that's brilliant. We've now sorted out all of the data that we need. We've tidied it all up. We're just passing through the data that's relevant here. So just to go back over that, we fetched the data, and then instead of sending all the data down, instead we sorted out the data first. We made it nice, kind of bite-sized, easy to use. So the first thing we want to do now is we've got our nice new city page. We've got all the data we need. So we want to create, what should we create first? We need to create the header element. The kind of overarching, the current weather, I think, is the best thing to start with. What should we do today's weather? I think first of all we'll sort out this page. So let's, at the top, let's import head from next head. So we're going to make a nice page title. And then head. We're going to make a new title. We're going to make use of the city.name because that's passed down to us. And then we're just going to call it Next Weather App here. Let's make that bigger. Back to our code. So we can now see our nice new title, New York Weather, because we're on the New York page. And we are going to create a new component now called Today's Weather. And we're going to make a little kind of summary box of all of today's weather. So let's create a new component called Today's Weather. RFC tab, H1, Today's Weather component. Let's go back to the city. And let's import our new component. So import today's weather. And then let's render today's weather down here. So I need to create a few elements first. We're going to make a div with the class name of page-wrapper. Inside there a container. And then we're going to render today's weather. Today's weather component. So that's all working perfectly. What we need to do though is we need to pass data to today's weather. We need to pass the... what do we want to pass? We want to pass the, we want to pass today's weather down to this component so that we can kind of render some elements from it. We can access that data in today's weather component. So I'm going to pass the city in there so we can access the city name. And I'm also going to pass as a prop in weather equals weekly weather naught. So that's using our weekly weather data. It's grabbing the first element in our weekly weather breakdown, which is passed in through here. It's daily. What do we want? Why are we calling it daily weather? Should be called weekly weather. No, that's fine. That's fine. Never mind. Daily weather from here, and it's the first day in our daily weather data. So we're passing in the first component there. So let's go back to our Today's Weather tab. I'm just going to close all of our other files for now. Close others to the right. In fact, let's just close them all. And let's open up the city page again. And then the new component we're working on, Today's Weather. Perfect. So inside Today's Weather, we're going to create some nice... so basically we passed in the props. So first of all, we need to access those props. So we passed in the city and we passed in a prop called weather. And I'm just going to console log this data to make sure it's coming through to the component. Which it is here. So this is our today's weather. And this is the city data. So let's, to begin with, let's delete this content. We're going to make a new div with a class name of today. And then a new div with a class name of today __ inner. And then today, a new div with a class name of today __ left content. And then a h1 where we're just going to render the city.name. So in curly brackets there. And then in rounded brackets, city.country. So there we go. We're now rendering, we're making use of the city data and we're rendering the name of the area. We also want to obviously put the today's weather in here. We don't just want a New York tab. We want to provide some valuable data. So if I right click and inspect and we have a look at the data again, console, inside this object, inside the weather, today's weather object, we have temp, and it will tell us in here what the max temperature is and the minimum temperature is going to be for the day. So we want to make use of this data and we're going to render it. So I'm going to create a H2 element, span tags, and this is where we want to import moment. So import moment from moment. So we're going to, you can see, in fact, do we need moment here? No, we don't need moment here, but we will need moment. So we'll keep it going. We're doing. I'm kind of jumping ahead. We're rendering the temperature first. So let's render. So inside the span tag, we're going to render the weather dot temp. You can see from the data here dot temp dot max, and then a new span tag below weather dot temp dot min. Ooh, curly braces on the end. There we go. So this is rendering the current weather in degrees C. Now, I'm not interested in the extra data here, the 0.96, and we need to kind of render at the and degrees C sign. So what I'm going to do is and degrees, that gives us the little degrees symbol, and then C, and degrees C. So there's our nice little degrees signs. And then I'm going to do at the end of these dot max to fixed 0, which will basically remove all of the extra decimal places. Okay. And then what I'm going to do, we've got access to quite a lot of data here. So we got here, we got what have we got? Was it moon? No, sunrise, sunset. That's quite helpful data. I want to make use of that to kind of show it on the top of the page. So underneath here, I'm going to make a div with the class name of today __ sun dash times. And then I'm going to make a new div called span sunrise. Sorry, that was too quick. Make a new div inside there, add a span tag with sunrise in it. And then let's make a new div underneath, put a span in there of sunset. And then what we want to do is we want to basically show the sunrise and the sunset time. So another span tag, weather, and then we're going to access the weather. So curly braces, weather.sunrise. Close the curly braces. And you can see this is our date timestamp. So this is where moment comes in. It's basically a library that will format our dates nicely for us. So let's remove that. I'm going to do moment.unix, because at the moment they're Unix timestamps, what we're given. Weather.sunrise, in the brackets, dot format, and then inside the brackets there, we're going to put the format inside double quotes as LT. And that'll basically give us a nice 11:10 a.m. That's our sunrise. And then our sunset is weather.sunset of 1:01 a.m. I'm just going to go back to localhost. I'm just going to go back to the home page quickly. I'm going to go to London, GB. 5:49 a.m., 8:19 p.m. So we can use that data instead. We'll use that London data here. Seeing as I'm in the UK, this makes a bit more sense to me. So we're making use of that data there. And then on the right-hand side, so we're now going to, underneath the left content div, which is down here, we're going to make a new div today __ right dash content. And then inside of there, we're going to have another div class of today a new div with the class of today __ icon dash wrapper, and then another empty div underneath. And inside of here, in a second, we're going to show an icon that basically gives us the current weather. And then we're going to have the weather description underneath here. So if we go down into our breakdown of data again, inside the weather, we can go to inside the breakdown of today's weather, there is another variable called weather inside there, or another property. And if we open up the first element of that property, naught, we can basically see a description of the weather, which is basically today's overall weather, will be light rain. And we're also given an icon ID, which is basically Open Weather Map have some nice icons, which is brilliant. And we're going to make use of those. So we can basically show what the weather is going to be for today. So inside this H3 below, I'm going to render weather.weather. And it's an array for some reason, even though there's only ever one bit of data from what I've seen. Weather naught dot description. So now we've got our description in there of light rain. And then we want to render an icon in here. Now Next wants you to render icons in a special way, or not icons, but images in a special way. So they have their own image wrapper. It's slightly irritating. It's one of my least favorite bits of Next. I'd rather them just use normal image tags, but they basically render images in the correct way. It ensures that you render images in the correct way. So we're going to import image from Next/image. And then we're going to render that there. So image equals source. And we're going to add a source. And then we're going to add an alt of equals to weather icon. And then we're going to add a layout of equals to fill. And this is just kind of some Next stuff there. So we need to set up our source. This is the most important thing here. So we were given a icon. Oh, see, it doesn't like it now. It's already crashing out for us. But we were given an icon ID, which I showed you earlier. So we're going to make source equal to a variable. We're going to use template literals. And we can access http/ and we're going to use openweathermap.org. You might want to copy and paste this rather than typing it out. /img/wn. And then we're going to pass in the weather icon it gave us. So weather.weather naught.icon, and then an @ symbol 2x.png. So that's basically the Open Weather Map, the API. They provide icons for us if we want to use them, which we're going to make use of. So what have I done wrong here? Okay. So another thing with Next images, if you're using the image element, you need to add the host name to the config, the Next config. So it's saying here, the hostname openweathermap.org is not configured. So inside your Next config.js, you need to create inside your module exports a new property called images, open up an object, domains, and then you need to add this openweathermap to the domain. This is why it's a bit irritating, but it makes you do it if you're using external websites. So openweathermap.org. I'm going to close this off here, and then I'm going to do. You got to remember to restart the app. So npm run dev. And when this refreshes eventually, we're still doing an invalid source property. So what are we doing wrong here? Openweathermap.org. It's not reading my new... It's not image, it's images. So I'm going to have to restart the application again. I had the wrong property name there. So now that I refresh, we now have our nice icon, and it's rendering wrong. Why is it rendering wrong? Let's see what we've done wrong in our styles. But either way, we've got our icon in here now, which is lovely. Today icon wrapper, it's ending, the h3 tag is inside this element, which we don't want. We want the h3 tag to be below that div. There we go. And now we have a nice overview of today's weather. And we can start moving on to the other components. Okay, so we're back working on the project. I just had a gap in between recording and realised there was quite a large oversight made when I was first creating the project, and that's around time zones. So we're going to have to make a few modifications, and we might as well do it early as it affects the rest of the project. Basically, what we're doing at the moment, most of the JavaScript, we're using Moment to do all of our time zones, but there was an oversight I made on the fact that Moment by default uses your local time zone. So I'm based in the UK, so London GB, the sunrise, sunset times, they make sense. But what I didn't think about was time zones dependent on your location. So if I go to, let's go to New York, for example. I'm just going back to the home page here. Let's go back to localhost 3000. So just the home page. If I go to New York, New York City, for example, and I have a look at the time zones here, you can see the sunrise at 11 a.m. and the sunset at 12:51 a.m. I kind of looked at that earlier in the project and thought that wasn't quite right. So I did some digging and realised, yeah, we're using the wrong time zones. So we're going to have to allow for that, which means we will need another NPM package. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to Control C out of the application. So I'm going to basically stop the application. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to NPM install, and I'll zoom in so you guys can see this. NPM install, and we're going to install moment-time zone. And the moment time zone is basically an extension of Moment, but it allows us to access all of the extra time zones and do stuff in according to a country-specific time zone. So now we've installed that, I'm going to run npm run dev. I'm going to run the project again. I'm going to start the zoom. And now, for example, so we're going to stay in today's weather, we're going to stay in this component, but instead of just importing normal moment, I'm going to import moment time zone. And the time zone for New York, we have in the data that we bring through from on the city.js component or page. So gone back to this page, I'm going to make this terminal a fair bit smaller here. So gone back to this page, and we actually have access to the time zone on data.timezone. So yeah, they provide us with that data already. OpenWeatherMap do, they've already considered that. So yeah, all I've done is added it to the props, so we now have access to time zone as well. So I'm going to go back down to the data here, our main component, and I'm going to grab time zone from the props. And inside today's weather, I'm going to pull through. I'm going to also send as a prop the time zone to this to our today's weather component. So now that we're in today's weather, we'll go back. I've just gone back to that component, and I'm also going to access that prop. So I'm going to access that prop through time zone. And now that we're importing moment as moment-time zone, we have access to another function, which is tz. And I'm going to attach the time zone, and it's going to be .tz just before we format it. And I'm going to attach the time zone to it. And we get an error. Oh, that's because I believe I just need to refresh the application there. It should bring it in. There we go. And now you can see that the sunrise and the sunset's been corrected. And previously that was at 11 a.m. and like 12 p.m. at night or something like that, which is just not right. So there we are. We've now corrected the time zone here. But that also means, because we haven't considered time zone properly, our get hourly weather also doesn't really work, because what that's doing is it's getting the hourly weather. So at the moment, for example, it's 9 o'clock at night here, so there's only 3 hours left of the day for me. So it would be basically whittling down the hourly data to only provide three objects in an array, and that's right for me in terms of my time zone if I was to look at GB, but it's not right in terms of New York City, because I think the time there at the moment is somewhere around 4 or 5 p.m. So they've still got 7 hours left of the day. And all of this stuff here, all of me messing around with dates here, that's doing it to my local time. So I appreciate this bit was confusing earlier, but we're now also going to have to rewrite this. And luckily, if we use moment, we can actually do it in a simpler way than I've done anyway. So time zones are one of those things when you're working in JavaScript, you've got to be very careful of, because they're typically local to your machine. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to delete this whole bit of code here. Oh, I've accidentally jumped around there by accident. Let's go back here. Right, okay. So we don't need this anymore. We're going to rewrite this in a more simple way. So I'm just going to delete that and delete that. And we can actually replace it just with a few lines of code thanks to moment. So we're going to make a new variable called const end of day. And on that, we're going to call moment. We're going to call the moment function. That basically gets the current time. And then we're going to do tz, and we're going to pass in the time zone. And then we're going to use, again, another moment addition, end of. So they allow us to get the end of day just by using .end of. So it's a lot simpler than our previous method, in fact, of having to kind of reset the time. And then we can do value of, which will give us the Unix timestamp. Because at the moment, this would just be in string form or date form, and it would kind of be a readable date form. But we want it as a Unix value because that's what OpenWeatherMap provide. But the Unix value here is in milliseconds. We need it in seconds. So I'm going to make a new variable called EOD timestamp. I'm going to timestamp like that. I'm going to make it equal to math.floor end of day. And then we're going to divide that by 1,000. So that just turns it from milliseconds into seconds. And now we're going to, all we've got to do is compare this. We don't want to do it by tomorrow's timestamp anymore. I'm just going to hide these files quickly, make more room. We don't want to do it by today's date anymore. We actually, tomorrow's timestamp, we want to now use EOD timestamp. So if we save that, that'll work better. But we are going to get an error here. If I refresh this page, we're going to get an error because I'm calling time zone here, but I'm not actually passing it in to the function. So where we call the function, I need to add it in here. We're going to add it in as another parameter to the function, and then we're going to data.timezone. So we're passing in the time zone from our data, and then we also need to add it to the function here. So now, if we refresh, moment is not defined. So I'm not actually importing it into this package yet, which is my mistake. So we into this city page. So I need to go import import moment from moment dash time zone, and that should fix our problems there. Okay, and to see that working, we can console log. What should we console log? The hourly weather. Let's console log hourly weather here. And you see here, we've now been returned 8 values, which is correct for this time zone. There's 8 hours left of their day. 8 there. If I was to go back to localhost 3000, where it's 9 o'clock at night here, for some reason it takes a while to go back at the moment in development mode. It's probably my machine. London GB. We then get 3 entries because there's only 3 hours left of the day for our time zone. So that's fixed a big problem there, which was a complete oversight, but it was worth doing earlier because it's going to affect our other components as well. So now we can move on to extra components. We're going to have a look into, we're going to create an hourly weather component to get our hour times down here. So it basically shows the weather for the rest of the day. So let's create a new component in here. We'll call it hourly weather.js. I'm going to close down some of these. Probably don't need today's weather anymore. We can always open it if we need to. And then I'm going to do RFC tab. And we've got hourly weather and H1 hourly weather component. And then I'm going to go back to the city page we've made. And I'm going to import that component there. We'll just bring this one down under here. Import hourly weather from // component / hourly weather. So we're bringing in the hourly weather now. And then I'm going to render that component down here. And we can see whether it's bringing it in. And it is. Okay, so we already have our hourly weather ready here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of that console log now. And I'm going to pass through our hourly weather as a prop to this component. And again, we need the time zone. I'm going to pass down the time zone. So let's go to our hourly weather component. So we need to get the hourly weather and time zone. So let's console log both of those to check we're getting the data. That doesn't want to be capped there. It needs to be lowercase. Console.log time zone. And let's just go back to today's weather whilst I think about it and stop console logging this because we're kind of finished work on that component. Right. Okay, and let's refresh the page. Sometimes you need to refresh it to get your console logs and whatnot. So again, this is the time zone here, and this is the hourly weather. So what I now want to do is we need to build up the page a bit more. We're just going to create some elements that we need. So we're going to make a div with a class name of hourly. We're going to make another div under there called hourly __ inner. And then what we're going to do is if there is hourly weather, so if hourly weather dot length is more than 0, hourly weather, I don't mean to do dot time zone there, dot length is more than 0, we are then going to render some, we're going to map through our hourly weather data. So we're going to do hourly weather dot map, and we're going to return weather, and then index. So we're going to map through that array. We're going to map through the array of hourly weather, and we're going to return something here. So inside there, we're going to create a div with the class name of hourly __ box wrapper. Just going to save there so that we format all of our code, makes it nice and neat. Gonna close that for now, and close this so we can see the code a bit more. So hourly box wrapper there. If we remember when we map through, we always have to have an index key. Sorry, so we're going to do a key of weather.dt. DT is the date time. It's the Unix timestamp. So we're going to use that there to basically use it as a key because all of the hourly weather have different date times attached to them. Then inside this component, we're going to create another hourly another div with the class name of hourly __ box. And if you're wondering where the double underscores come, it's from a styling practice called BEM or BEM. You can look that up. It's just a kind of way to name your styling. And we are going to make a span below here with the class name of hourly __ time. And then inside of here, we're going to make use of moment and display the time. So moment.unix, and then we're going to pass in weather.dt. We then need to pass in the time zone, so .tz, time zone, then format, we're going to use LT again. So we've imported moment here, but actually we need moment-time zone. So let's adjust that to moment/time zone and see what it's going. Okay, cool. So we've got boxes here with the kind of hours left in the day. But I want to make a small change here. 9 PM is basically current time. So instead of displaying 9 PM, I want to show the word now to make it clearer. So inside of here, where we've got this moment-time zone, what I'm going to do is I'm going to check if the index is 0. So if the index is 0, if it's the first element in the array, we know it's the current time. So if it is the current time, I'm going to do some conditional formatting Let's make it a bit clearer. Let's leave the old code at the top. So if index is equal to 0, let's display the word now. If not, let's paste this in here and show the formatted time. Okay, so now we've got now, 10 PM, 11 PM. I also want this to be in bold, so I created another class name to bold up the now time. So we're going to do some conditional formatting on this class name here. So again, I'm going to kind of do the new code underneath to show what we're doing. So class name equals, we're going to use JavaScript in here, so I'm going to do it as a variable, use template literals. So we're going to, first we know we need the hourly time class, but I'm going to add an additional class if it's now. So now inside of here, I'm going to do if index is equal to 0, then add an additional class of hourly underscore underscore time dash dash now. Otherwise, just leave it as normal. Don't add another class if it's not the now time. So if I click save on there, it's going to give me probably an error because I've got two class name elements. There you are. So now you can see the now is just slightly bolder. Makes it a bit clearer. Underneath here, we need to import image from next/image. And underneath our span tags, I'm going to return an image. We're going to use the source, and I'm just going to go back to the other component where we used this source before. So what was that? That was in today's weather. And I'm going to copy this source so we don't have to type it out again. So that's a painful one to type out. And I believe that's actually right as it is. We don't have to make any adjustments there. Alt, I'm going to say, and as the alt tag, we're going to use weather.weather.description. We use the description for the alt tag. And then I'm going to add width equals 100 in quote marks there, and height equals 100. You need to, depending on how you use your image, you either have to provide a width element or a height element, width and height attribute, or you can do stuff like, for example, on today's weather, we use layout equals fill, where you don't have to specify a width and height. But for this one, we know what width and height we want, so we're gonna give it there. And then for the rest of the hours, we're then also going to display the temperature. So we're going to use the weather.temp to fixed 0 to make sure that we don't have the extra decimal places like last time. I'm going to do and degrees, then C. If you're using Fahrenheit, you could obviously use F. And we could also probably be clever as well with the time zones, because obviously in the UK we use degrees C, but maybe if we were searching on America, searching in America, for example, we could potentially use degrees Fahrenheit. We could do that conversion if we wanted to, but for this tutorial, I'm going to leave it as that. So that displays our hourly time there nicely. So this is London, and again, I'm going to display that our time zones are now working by going to New York City. And you can see they've got plenty of hours left, so they've got much more entries there. So they've got now 5 PM, 6 PM, 7 PM, and so on. So they've got way more entries because they're in a different time zone. So let's go back to, well, it doesn't really matter where we end up, but we're going to go back to London. So now, again, we're going to make so we've got our current weather, and now I want to display the weekly weather. So the weekly, what we're expecting for the rest of the week, the forecast for the week. So we're going to make another component called weeklyweather.js, IFC tab again, to create our functional component. And then again a H1 saying weekly weather component. And then, so I'm going to close these other tabs off just for now. So again, I'm going to go to the city page, and I'm going to import weekly weather from the components. I've got auto fill in there, so that kind of filled it out quickly for me. And then we're going to display weekly weather down here. Save that. We should see that component pop up. Perfect. And then we are going to pass on the, what are we going to pass on? We're going to pass on the daily weather. Is it daily? Yes, it is the daily weather. Should probably call that weekly weather. Let's call that weekly weather. Instead, I'm going to do time zone equals time zone. So now we go to weekly weather. We've called our prop weekly weather instead of daily. Works better. Weekly weather we need to have access to, and also time zone as well. Again, I've accidentally done capital letters for weekly weather. We don't want that. Okay, so we now want to create some more elements in here. So I'm going to make a div with a class name of weekly. We're going to have a title to this section. So we're going to have a h3 tag with the class name of weekly __ title. And then we're just going to do weekly. And then inside span tags, weather in there. So we've got a nice title. And then we're going to do some checks again to check that weekly weather.length is more than 0. So we have results. And then we are going to, if there is results, we're going to map through the weekly weather. So again, I'm going to pass through weather and the index. And we normally were making rounded brackets, but this time we're going to make square brackets because we need to check first if the index is equal to 0. We don't want to return anything. We don't want to render anything, because if the index is equal to 0, that's today's current weather, which we already have up here. We just want all the other days of the week. So if it isn't equal to 0, we're going to return some HTML, which is a div with a class name of weekly __ card. And then I'm going to add a key to this, which is equal to, again, weather.dt. And then another div underneath the class name of weekly inner. And then another one inside there with a class name of weekly __ left dash content. And then what we're doing in here, so we want an empty div. And we want a h3 tag. And inside that h3 tag, we're going to make use of moment. So we need to import moment again. But again, it's imported the wrong version of moment, so I'm going to do moment-timezone. So we're going to do moment.unix weather.dt, so that's the date time, .tz, well, providing the time zone. And then this time we're going to do a format of dd, which basically displays the date, or not the date, sorry, the day. So if I save that, we'll be able to see that live. Look, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. Got our dates there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Just making sure that we only had 7 entries for next week, which is working. Underneath the air, we're going to display the temperatures. So we're going to have a H4. We're going to make a span tag. And inside there, we're going to do weather.temp.max.tofix. So we're going to display the max weather for that day. And then we're going to do and degrees C to show that there. And then I'm going to copy and paste that below. And we're going to show the min as well. There we go. So we've got max and min in that. So the max temperatures for the day and whatnot. And then again, we're going to display the data like we're going to display the sunrise, sunset. So I'm going to make another div underneath this with a class name of weekly __ sun-times. Inside there is going to be a div with a span and inside there sunrise as a title. Another span underneath. And then we're going to make use of moment again. And then we're going to provide moment.unix and then weather.sunrise. And again, we need to pass in the time zone. So time zone there. And then the format for that is going to be LT again in capitals. Capitals is important for that one. So then we've got this div, that's the sunrise. I also want to display the sunset. So all I've done there is I copied this element. I'm going to place that down there. Replace this with sunset. And replace weather.sunrise with .sunset there. So we have the sunset, sunrise and sunset. This looks a bit unneat at the moment. So I'm going to adjust the styling. You shouldn't have to worry about this. I think you should have, you will have up-to-date files if you have pulled down the latest code. So this will change, you won't have to worry about. So let's just do like a min width of 165 there. So it makes all these sunrises line up. Lovely. Weekly weather there. Weekly _ sunset times. So underneath, so this is all our left content done. So not underneath this div, but one below again. I'm going to make a new div with a class name of weekly _ right content. Another one again inside, weekly _ icon wrapper. Inside there, we're going to have a div. And then we're going to have an image. So I need to import the image component from Next.image. Then we're going to have an image. And I'm going to add a layout of fill. So layout equals fill. And then again, I'm going to go back to the hourly weather and copy and paste that source, because once again, it's exactly the same. And then I'm also going to make the alt equal to weather.weather.description. And I should really do that in this. Okay, why are we not? Ah, there we go. They were just taking a while to come in. Those icons there. So I should also do it. Oh, there's an alt tag there set properly as well. But I know that in today's weather, so if I open up the today's weather component, we were lazy with the alt there. What I'm actually going to do is adjust this alt to also equal weather.description. There we go. So that's just changes the alt tag there. Not visible, but it's good practice. Okay, where were we? Weekly weather. And then underneath the icon wrapper, so underneath this div class, I'm going to add a h5. Weather.weather.description. So we're adding the description underneath there as well. So that's looking all tidy. That nearly sums up our city pages. What I do want to do is I want to bring in the search bar in the top again, so that even if you're in London, I could search for New York from here, for example. And we made that as a component. So we've made that as a search. We made the search box component here. So what we can do is we can go to city. I can go to the top. I can import search box from the components folder. I'm going to add it in underneath the container. Right there. Ooh, page was reloading quite slowly there. Perfect. I'm actually going to add in a placeholder prop as well, because at the moment it's just a bit bland. We need kind of a placeholder saying search for another location or something like that. So I'm going to make a placeholder that says search for another location. So I'm going to pass that in as a prop to the search box element. I'm going to close others to the right, close all the other files. And then I'm going to go to the search box component. Let's close that down. And I'm going to grab the placeholder here. So we're passing it through as a prop. And what I'm going to do is on the input, if a placeholder is provided, so if placeholder is true or not null, I'm going to return the placeholder. Otherwise, there's no placeholder. There we go. Search for another location. And if I go back to the home page, let's add a placeholder to that one as well. Something like search for a city to the placeholder there. So I'm going to open up index.js. And on the search box, I'm going to say search for a city. So New York, for example. So let's go to New York City. And then when we're at that page, I could search for another location. So I could search for London GB, for example. See, we have a little issue there. So the page has changed, but the query is still there. So we're still seeing results. What we want to do is we want to listen to the page change. And then if the page does change, we want to set our query to nothing. So what I'm going to do inside of the search box element is I'm going to add a new use effect. So let's go to the search box. So what we're going to do in React use effect, in React previously there was unmounted lifecycle methods and stuff like that, but over the past few years things have changed to make use of use effect instead of those lifecycle methods. So what we're going to do is we're going to do React use effect. Inside there, we're going to open up a function. And then after that function, we're going to do a comma and just some square brackets. And that square brackets basically means this is going to happen when the search box mounts. This is basically equivalent to on mount. And what we're going to do is we're going to create inside there a new little mini function called clear query. So all of this is going to do is a little mini function, an arrow function there, and it's going to set the query to nothing. So that's not being called at the moment, but what we're going to do is going to do router. So we're going to make use of Next.js's router, so we need to import that. So import router from next/router, and the router can tell us when we changed pages. So we're going to do router.events.on. We're going to listen to route change complete. So that basically means once a page has changed, do something afterwards. Tell us what you want to do. So if we have changed page or the route has changed, I want to call clear query up here. And then you can add a return to these use effects that will happen when the component unmounts. So when the component unmounts, we want to turn our event listener off for route change. In fact, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy this above here, and instead of on, we want off. So let's change that and then clear that up. So now, if I was to click when this refreshes, so if I was to now click New York, you see as it changed route there, it cleared our query, which means we can now see the page properly, which is much better. And whilst we're looking at the router events on route change complete, we might as well add our nice little loading bar. So what we're going to do is we're going to go into, where is it, _app.js, and we're going to make use of react.useEffect and the router again. And what we're going to do here, so I'm just going to make a React use effect like we did last time, and again I'm going to import. Well, we need to import React to this component because it wasn't already there. And we also need to import router from Next.router. And then we are also going to import nProgress from nProgress. That's one of the npm packages we added right at the start. And this basically will add a nice loading bar at the top for us to show the progress. So we're going to make another couple of mini functions in here. We're going to make one called start. That's going to be nProgress.start. And what that's going to do is it's going to start the loading bar and then end. So this is going to be a little function that stops the loading bar once we've gone to the new page. I think it's done. Yeah, .done. So now we need to listen to router events again, like we did in the previous component. So we're going to do router events on. We're going to listen to a different event this time. So route change start. So that's when we start changing the route. It's going to run the start function and router.events.on. If route, and then on route change complete, we're going to run the end command because we've made it to the route. We're going to add another one again, another event listener to route change error. So if it hits a 404 page or whatever, it will error out instead. And again, like the previous one, when this component unmounts, we want to turn off those event listeners. So I'm just going to copy these from above, and for each one, off, off, and off. Okay, so we can see this in effect in a second. So if I go to, let's say I go to London, for example, there we go. We've got a nice loading bar at the top that shows us the progress. I also want to add in a way to get back to the home page, because at the moment we don't have that. We just have, you're kind of stuck on the page and you have to change the URL at the top. So I'm going to go back to the city page, and above the search box, we're going to add in a link just to take us back home. So we need to again import link from next/link. And we're going to add a link here. So link and href, we just want to go to home, so it's just slash, and then I'm going to add in an a tag with the class name of back-link. We can remove the href, we don't need it because the link element, the link component will add that for us. We're going to do an and symbol, LARR for left arrow, and home. So that adds a nice little home button, so we can get back to the home page from whatever page we're on. So London GB, we go back there. I've also noticed we haven't got a space between the state or the query and the country, and that's slightly annoying, so I'm going to go to search box, and basically we need to add a space in here. So I'm just going to do curly braces, I'm going to do quotation marks, and just a space in there to make sure to force a space to be rendered. There you go. And that's cleaned up that little space between the results there. Okay, so we are pretty much there in terms of functionality. We've more or less finished the app, but to add something more interesting to the homepage, I want some icons with kind of famous cities, just hard coded into the homepage, just to make it all a bit interesting. So I'm going to close all of these, and I'm going to go and open up the index.js. And we're going to make a new component, new file called famous places.js, RFC again, h1, famous places component, and inside the index page we're going to import that, import famous places from ... component / famous places. There we go. And then we're going to put the famous places underneath the search block. And that'll do us there to import the element. Perfect. So let's go to the famous places. So what we're going to do here is we're just going to hard code some kind of like famous places. You can do wherever you want, but at the start I got you to pull over some images, and inside those images I just kind of found some Google images of London, New York, Paris, and Tokyo. So they're the cities we're going to go for. So we need to import image. We're going to make use of image from next/image. We're also going to have links, so I'm going to import link from next/link. And then we actually need to import the images themselves. So I'm going to import the London image from /public /images /london.jpg. And I'm just going to copy this 4 times. 2, 3, 4. So we're going to have London. What else have we got? We've got Paris. I'm going to capitalize this. And we have Tokyo. Capitalize this. And New York image there. New York. And then what we're going to do is we're going to create our own data here. So we're going to do const places, and so this is just going to be an array that we're going to map through. So we're going to create our own objects inside there. We're going to have a name element for each city. We're going to have a image for each city, and we're going to have a URL for each city, which we're going to pass in. So let's do London to begin with. So London, and then the image is a London image. So it's that we've imported. And the URL is going to be, well, for now, we'll just do location / and we'll add in the correct location afterwards. We'll hard code that in a second. So I'm going to copy this down once. Name, Paris image. Again, just going to do the same for Tokyo and the same for New York. Okay. So we've got our kind of dummy data, our hard-coded data set up. So what we're going to do is now we're going to make some elements. I'm going to make a div with a class of places. Inside there, we're going to make a div with a class of places __ row. And then if places.length, even though we've hard-coded it, it's always good to check that that data exists before you try and map to prevent any errors. So check if it's not empty. If it's not empty, we're going to do places.map. And we're going to go, we're going to pass in place and index. Don't think we need use of the index. Let's put it in anyway. We'll use that as our key. And so I've just made a function there with some rounded brackets. And then inside of that, we're going to have a div with a class name of places __ box. We need to add a key to this. So key is just going to be index because we know that's going to be unique each time. And then inside that, we're going to have a link. I'm going to have a href. And the href is going to be place in curly brackets .url. That's the one we're going to hard code. We haven't got them set up yet, but I will set them up in a second. We're then going to have an a tag, so it displays as a link. And then we're going to pass in another div with a class name of places _ image wrapper, image dash wrapper there, and then image with source of image.url. That's the no, we don't need not image.url. It's places place.image. The alt we're going to make equal to. We're going to use template literals. So place.name image. Just always good to keep tidy on the alt tags. Layout equals fill and object fit is equal to cover. So that's going to render our images for us. Let's just say that. There you go. So we've got our images. We've got London, Paris, Tokyo, and New York. And then we also need underneath this image wrapper div, we're going to add span with place.name. There we go. So we've got London, Paris, Tokyo, and New York. So we created the elements for them, though none of them have got the right links, so I'm going to go and grab those individually. So we want London GB. So I'm going to copy this URL here. So it's location. So that one's that. What else do we want? We want Paris, France. Going to copy that. We want New York City. I'm going to copy that. Oh, didn't copy enough there. All of that. There. Oh, that's the wrong place. New York City is the bottom one. Got to do Tokyo, so let's do Tokyo now. Japan. I'm going to copy. Did I do the right Tokyo there? What was the one above? Yep, that's the right Tokyo. So Tokyo goes there. So if we now go to the home, click London. It takes us through to London's weather. Paris goes to Paris. Tokyo goes to Tokyo. And New York goes to New York. Perfect. And I think that pretty much sums it up. We are going to go through some deployment practices at some point. I'll show you how to deploy the application as well using something like Vercel. But in terms of the app, that's it. We've done our bit. We've got time zones in there. We've got grabbing data from an API. I don't know what this image is down here. Whilst I look at that, that doesn't need to be there. We've done all sorts of data. So The great thing with Next is it's grabbing the data before we even render the page, instead of having to add loading states in with React, or you're waiting for stuff to load on the page. We've got a nice loading bar at the top, so there's some good practices in here. You can obviously expand this massively and kind of go wherever you want with it, but for now this is a great kind of Next starter project, and gives you some building blocks to be able to do more. And we've made sure we've kept our components nice and neat. If you wanted to stretch this task again, something like we got the city list.json, maybe you could make it even more, make use of another API which could search for the location. Google Maps API we could have integrated there, where Google Maps could have come up with our kind of autofill results for us, and then we could have got the coordinates from there, instead of using hard-coded JSON. It's pretty quick, but it could be quicker in terms of the fact it's got to filter thousands and thousands of results. So yeah, maybe an external API would have worked there. I like the nice use of time zones there. So yeah, overall a great project. And I'll either be adding to the end of this video, or depending on the length of it, we'll be creating a new video just showing you how to deploy your Next app to Versal, which are the creatives of Next. You can do it pretty much with one click if you have a GitHub repo set up. So cool. That's all we've got to go through the tutorial. If you like the video, make sure you like and subscribe. If you have any difficulties, leave comments and I'll get back to you. And if you have any ideas for future tutorials, let me know as well, and we'll take a look.